For section 5.7, we'll explore polynomial division. There's going to be several different techniques we'll explore, so let's just get started. In our first example, we're asked to divide 12x to the 6th plus 30x to the 4th minus 27x squared, all of that divided by 3x squared. We've actually seen stuff like this earlier in the class, but let's review. The idea here is that we need to take each of these, the 12x to the 6th, the 30x to the 4th, the negative 27x squared, and divide each of them by 3x squared. That's what this means. We need to divide each term by the denominator. So let's do that. So we have 12x to the 6th, that's going to be divided by 3x squared, plus 30x to the 4th, that's divided by 3x squared. And then we also have minus 27x squared divided by 3x squared. Truth be told, I normally skip this step. This is just something I'm thinking about in my head, but for our first time through, let's write that out. And now we can actually simplify. So let's see, 12 divided by 3, that's just 4. X to the 6th divided by x squared. If you remember, you just can subtract the exponents, and that leaves you with x to the 4th on top. Another way to look at it is this is x to the 6th is x times x times x times x times x times x, 6 of them. I hope I got them all. And on the denominator, we just have 2 of those x's, so 2 of those x's will cancel. Well, anyway, so x to the 6th divided by x squared leaves you with x to the 4th on top. Similarly, 30 divided by 3 is just 10, and x to the 4th divided by x squared leaves you with an x squared on top. For this last one, 27 divided by 3, that's just 9. And x squared divided by x squared just gives you 1. The x's cancel out completely. Let's rewrite that so it's a little bit neater. And we get 4x to the 4th plus 10x squared minus 9. And that's our final answer. Okay, so what happens if we have... we only had one term in the denominator here. You see we just had the 3x squared. That's called a monomial. And whenever you have a monomial, sorry, just trying to remember how to spell it, you can use this technique and it will work out nicely. But what happens if we have a binomial or a trinomial, more than one term in the denominator? We have to try to explore different procedures. So let's look at this one. And this is actually a somewhat difficult one because we have 2 different variables in here. One thing we can do is try to factor the numerator and factor the denominator. The denominator can't be factored any more than it is, but the numerator can. So looking at this, let me just try to rewrite this. The numerator is going to become x plus 7y times x minus 3y. I factored that by just doing trial and error in my head. But you can check it. X times x is x squared. Multiplying the outer terms give you negative 3xy. Inner terms give you 7xy, which combine to be the 4xy we need. And 7y times negative 3y would give you negative 21y squared. And all of that is divided just by x minus 3y. If you notice, these cancel. So we have x minus 3y divided by x minus 3y. And that's our answer. Our answer is just going to be x plus 7y. And as long as both the numerator and denominator factor, you might be able to cancel out common factors, and then you'd be left with your answer. Okay, so let's move on to a different one. 68 divided by 3. Technically, this could still be considered polynomial division, but of course, we've seen this many times before. This is just division. Just to start off, there are several different ways we can look at division and several different ways you've seen division before. One of them is like how it's written, 68 divided by 3, 68 over 3. You might also see it like this, like 68 divided by 3. Or another way you might have seen it is where there's 3 as the divisor and it's written outside the box, and you have 68 inside. This is the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to use long division to solve this. So let's do that. So 68, the numerator, goes inside the box, and outside the box goes the 3, the denominator. So the 3 goes over here, and the numerator, the 68, goes inside the box. Okay, so let's actually do this and review long division. And the reason why I'm reviewing long division is not because I don't think you know how to do this. Of course you do. It's more of a matter of that we're going to use a very similar procedure when doing polynomial long division. And what you do is you take this 3 and you say, how many times does 3 go into 6? The answer is 2, and you write the 2 above the 6. Next, you take the 2, you multiply it by the 3, and you write it below the 6. And then you subtract the 2 lines. 6 minus 6 is 0, and your next step was to bring down the 8. Hopefully this procedure is familiar. Then you say, how many times does 3 go into 8? Well, it goes in actually 2 times, but then there's some left over. So 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract those 2 lines again, and you get 2. It's unfortunate there's all these 2's here. I should have worked this out in advance. So our answer is that 68 divided by 3 is 22 with a remainder of 2. And you might have seen that written like this. So the answer would be 22 with a remainder of 2. Now, even though this is the correct answer, that's not really a good way to write it. So one way you would have learned is to write it like this, 22, and take the remainder and put it over the divisor. So it's 22 and 2/3. Now what 22 and 2/3 really means is there's really like a plus in here that you don't see. So it really means 22 plus 2 over 3. It's not a multiplication, it's a plus. And even though this is the preferred way of writing it, this is really what's going on. It's 22 plus 2/3. In other words, 22 times 3 gives you 66, and then there's 2 left over. All right, let's do the same kind of procedure, but with polynomials. Here we have 2x squared plus 4x minus 21, all divided by x minus 3. You might be able to do this by factoring, but let's try to do it with long division instead. And I'm going to use the same procedure. I'm going to take the numerator and put it inside the box. So we have 2x squared plus 4x minus 21. All of that is divided by x minus 3. So this is where the procedure differs a little bit. Instead of looking at the entire divisor, we're just going to look at the first part of the divisor, just the x. And we're going to say how many times is x, or what do we have to multiply x by to get 2x squared? Well, the answer is 2x, because 2x times x gives you 2x squared. Since it's just the variable part is just an x, I'm going to put it over the x term so I don't get confused. So in other words, 2x times x gives you 2x squared. That's really the only part that's very different. From that point on, you're just going to multiply. So it's going to be 2x times the whole thing now. Now you're going to take the whole thing and multiply. So 2x times x minus 3. Well, 2x times x is 2x squared. And 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. So next we're going to subtract, and we know we're going to subtract, but it's going to be a little bit confusing because remember, we're subtracting more than one part here, more than one term. Well, subtracting just means you're changing the sign. So this is going to be a minus, and this negative is going to change into a positive. And now you can just add the lines, which is a little less confusing. So 2x squared minus 2x squared gives you 0, and actually that's always going to happen where these should cancel. And 4x plus 6x gives you 10x. Now you repeat the procedure just like you would have done before. But remember before we brought down the next term, so I'm going to bring down the minus 21. And now I ask the question again. What times x is going to give you 10x? And the answer is 5. So I'm going to write a 5 over here. Now you multiply. 5 times x. Wait, not 5, 10. Sorry, 10. Sorry about that. 10 times x gives you 10x. And 10 times 3, or 10 times negative 3, gives you negative 30. Again, we have to subtract these lines. Since we're subtracting, just change the sign of everything. And you're left with, let's see, the 10x's cancel out. Negative 21 plus 30 gives you 9. So our remainder is 9. Well, we could write that the way we wrote it before. So it's going to be 2x plus 10 plus, take the remainder and put it over the divisor. So it's 9 over x minus 3. Okay, I know that was a little bit tricky. Let's do it one more time. This time it's written a little bit differently. Not a big deal though. This first part, this would essentially be acting as our numerator. And the second part is our divisor. Okay, so let's do this. So we have, sorry, it's a little messy. Let's write it down here. So we have 4x cubed, and let's pause for a moment. Notice there's no x squared term. Just like if we were writing the number, let's say 2003, you'd have to put placeholding zeros for the hundreds place and the tens place. We have to do the same thing here. We can't just leave off the x squared term. We have to put a 0 in front of it. So put 0x squared for the x squared term, because we need to put the placeholder there, but it should be 0. Then minus 7x plus 9. All of that is divided by the 2x minus 1. All right, let's get going. So again, looking here and looking here, what times 2x gives you 4x cubed? Well, that would be 2x squared. So you see why we wanted to put that x squared term in there. So we'll put our 2x squared over the x squared term. Now you multiply. 2x squared times 2x gives you 4x cubed. Again, those should always match. And then 2x times negative 1 gives you minus 2x. Sorry, squared. Subtract these lines means you change the sign of everything, and then you add them together. So 0 plus 2 just gives you 2x squared, and these always cancel out. All right, and then we bring down the next term. Let's repeat the procedure. 2x times what gives you 2x squared? Well, that's just x. So I'll write an x over here. Then x times this whole thing. X times 2x gives you 2x squared, and x times negative 1 gives you minus x. Again, we need to subtract the lines, which means we need to change all the signs. The 2x squareds cancel, and we're left with negative 6x. Now bring down the last one. Okay, so 2x times what gives you negative 6x? The answer is negative 3. Negative 3 times 2x gives you negative 6x. And negative 3 times negative 1 gives you plus 3. Again, we're subtracting the lines, so all the signs need to change. The 6x's cancel out, and you're left with 6 as the remainder. So that's our final answer. Let me write it over here. So our final answer is going to be 2x squared plus x minus 3 plus a remainder of 6, which we have to put over the divisor.